join via Zoom, but I think in the interest of time, we will get started. And I got several pleas. Names will be withheld to protect the innocent, pun intended, from people around this table to keep it short. And I can promise you I will, because I have an 8 o'clock meeting.
Yeah,
So that will be the case every time. But I want to thank you all for being here and for caring about public safety, however you may define it. And I think that's where we're going to start. I'm Jamie Floyd. I guess what we can do, because we always have new members, or maybe we don't have intersection of all committees, let's take a quick whip around the table. And I will ask each person to identify the public safety issue that is, and just one. Now, let's exercise some discipline. One public safety issue that is at the forefront of your mind this evening. And it can be one that is important to you, or maybe one that you feel is at the forefront for your community, building, a block, or constituents, however you may define them. So why don't we start with Isaac? And I'm going to go this way. So I've just spoken, so I can speak last.
Hi, everyone. I'm Isaac Adlerstein, and very happy to be here tonight. The public safety issue.
Can you tell us about your committees?
Oh, sure. I serve as the co-chair of the Health and Human Services Committee on Housing and Land Use and Business and Consumer Issues. And the public safety issue that is most on my mind is what I consider to be open air drug selling and use in the district. I'll pass it on to you, sir.
Thank you, Isaac.
Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Anderson. Unlike you, I'm not a member of the community board, but I'm a civilian citizen. And I head a group called the Upper West Side Coalition of Block Associations and Community Groups, which is about 32 different organizations throughout the Upper West Side that are block and neighborhood associations joined with leading nonprofits that serve our community. And for me, one of the big issues is that we are a relatively safe area in New York City. If you look at CompStat reports, the computer statistics by the NYPD collects, you see that we're not one of those at the height on almost any of the major crimes and issues. And what has happened is that our precincts have lost more and more officers, and we have fewer and fewer police in our precincts. And when there is need to pull officers out for other duties, they're pulled out. None of us are for increased crime in the subway, but we lost 12 officers to that effort. When there's parades, when there are special events, they're pulling. So we have a precincts that have lower numbers of officers than anyone would have thought was appropriate. And where are the advocates for our community's need for seeing more police and having them more responsive? Know about the Q quality, the new Q teams. These quality of life teams weren't created because the NCO program was working so well. Okay, they were created because obviously that wasn't working so well. So there are issues, and I was said that just one. I got a whole bag, as I'm sure all of you do, but
I appreciate that.
sticking to Jamie's. That's one that I think where are the advocates for our community's need for having police and strengthening our police precincts and having a greater police presence on the street.
Thank you very much, David.
Doug Kleiman, member of this board, former vice chair and public safety coordinator, so spent a tremendous amount of time on this issue, serve on the BCI committee, serve on the transportation committee. There's a lot of commitment to this. And even though you've asked us to choose one item, I've said it before here, I'll say it again. I think that our role here should obviously deal with the most serious things in order, like a triage approach in an emergency room. So clearly things that are of life and limb are always going to be number one. There are the 7 major crimes that we should always be mindful of what's happening in all precincts. They are reported regularly. There's issue with underreporting on some things. So crime data drives the fortification and the staffing of the police department and the patrols. So it's a complicated issue, which I've spent a lot of time with, and I will share whatever I've learned over the period. We want to be responsive to what's happening on a day-to-day basis, and things were talked about this evening that are happening. So we want to be responding in real time. Again, I'm going to take a triage approach, the most serious things, followed by moderate, followed by a tertiary. My personal interest, because I work in retail real estate, is retail theft. I don't think it's the most important thing when it comes to life and limb, but that's an area that I have spent a lot of time with related to trespass affidavits with the district attorney's office. So anyway, I think I've said enough, but glad to be here.
Thank you, Doug.
Hi, I'm Tabitha Kanene, member of the board, member of the Housing and Land Use Committee. I guess my most important issue would probably be protecting migrants. Yeah, especially migrants.
Thank you.
Jay Adolph, member of the board on the Transportation and Preservation Committees. Preservation I chaired for 7 years until I was termed limited. I agree with the concerns expressed by everybody, but demanded that we choose one. Mine is e-bikes. I think it's universally probably, well, I know it's from our public elected officials that it's their complaint lists. And by way of background, in September of 2021, I proposed and the board passed a resolution in September calling on the various government agencies, the governor, the mayor, city council, et cetera, to evaluate the issues on e-bikes and come back with proposals. To nobody's surprise, they didn't do anything. So in December, I introduced. In December of that year, I introduced another resolution, specifically calling for registration, insurance, and mandatory helmets. That passed the full board as well between that time 4 years ago. And now virtually nothing has been done in those areas. So I mentioned it for discussion at a transportation committee meeting. And a couple of members of the committee felt that the board had already spoken and it wasn't necessary to bring up the issue again. I explained that since over this 4-year period, the use of e-bikes has ballooned exponentially in the city. For example, City Bike, out of their 25,000 bikes on the road now, 15,000 are e-bikes. I don't have to tell anybody here that every delivery stuff now has an e-bike. I don't think I have to tell anybody what we all see on a day-to-day basis, anecdotally, which is e-bike operators going through red lights, driving on the sidewalks, going the wrong way in one-way streets, et cetera. So I think the time is right for us to renew our concerns. And my intent was first to bring up a resolution at transportation. One of the newly appointed co-chairs, for reasons that I won't go into now, declined to bring up a new resolution or reconsider the issue, telling me and the rest of the committee that the board spoke and it's unnecessary, etc. My intention is to draft a new resolution on those issues. And if I can, since I apparently won't have the opportunity to bring it to transportation, my intent is to bring it to this newly formed task force for consideration.
Thank you, Jack.
And by the way, if the task force for some reason, and I'm hopeful that that won't be the case, doesn't act on it, any member at any time can introduce a resolution. If I have to, I'll do it myself.
Right.
But hopefully, there's enough concern around this issue 4 years later that with the task force will act.
Thank you, Jack.
Okay. I just have one quick thing to say. I went to a transportation symposium at the Rudin Center down at Wagner, and I was surprised to hear that the Upper West Side is the most densely populated area for food delivery services.
Yeah.
And I did not know if we knew that,
Hmm.
because I certainly did not know that anecdotally, but the Rudin Center for
That's what the
Transportation-
mayor, that's how the mayor answered at the town hall on the Upper West Side that he held here maybe 6 or 8 months ago.
Yes,
When the first couple of questions were in fact about that.
yes,
He said, look, folks, you can look at the numbers. You
Yes.
are ordering Chinese food and
Yes.
hamburgers from all
Yes.
across the city, and you are bringing in
yes.
this
I
traffic
was
by your
surprised.
ordering pattern.
As
He
an
said,
Upper
the
West Sider
data
for
is there.
26 years, I was actually very surprised to hear
And
that.
he gave
Um,
it, he offered up, he
so-
offered up the data, and it
Yeah.
sort of quieted the crowd a little
Yes.
bit,
Yeah.
because we all felt guilty for this. all those orders.
Well,
So just apropos to that, but the transition
I'm
from
sorry.
4 years
Do you have
ago,
a
that was
question?
Yeah, just
heavy
a,
COVID time to now transformational change.
I think we have a question
yeah,
and then we'll
just
move
a
on with
question
the
about
issue.
that. I'm not gonna get into a big thing, but I don't, if you know the answer, when he said greatest density delivery service, was that like per person, per area, just like what exactly?
I think it was just pure numbers, and it was over, I think, an issue about a relief station wanting to be built
Uh-huh.
Yes,
on
yes,
the
that's a
west
big
side,
issue.
and so that was the
Yeah.
trigger point. And
Yes,
then
it's a big issue.
we did not build it.
Got
We as a community would not allow it to be built for a number of reasons, so that,
All right, so
that was-
let's pick
that
up
was
with the issues and then we'll be more
Right,
than
I think
happy
that's-
to.
that's
That was a,
something
that was a,
that I
that was a
did
very
not
good
know.
question
It
because
does
with data,
reinforce
you
your-
need to
your-
know
Yeah.
exactly
Okay.
where the
Let's
data's
go
coming
around.
from. Okay, so is that your issue or do you have a different issue?
It is one of them. I have 3 children. I have 11, 13, and 18, and I've done homeless outreach in our community for decades now. And I will say that my greatest concern as a community member, but also as a professional, is the increasing unwellness and the confluence of severe mental health issues, coupled with the lack of physical health and the lack of real clarity about the right to shelter and how we're dealing with it on our streets. Because I used to be very involved and I worked for the Department of Health for a number of years, and I used to be very connected with the Department of Homeless Services. And I really understood when I picked up the phone to call the contractor that has the street homeless contract, which it used to be a different one, now it's Goddard. But I have to say, I don't know how. It used to be, I understood the process, because when I saw someone and I was doing my outreach, I thought, I know they're gonna come. I know they're gonna pick them up because we don't allow these. And now I'm concerned because as I have, my children are commuting by themselves now, or one of them wants to, I'm concerned. I'm concerned for the welfare of the people who are on the street, and not having that direct connection of the service, but I'm also confused that I'm confused.
Can you,
So-
because you began with a question, they're gone. Because you began with a question, you did not introduce yourself or
sorry.
say your committee.
Sorry, I am Jennifer Mulsby, and I'm a relatively new board member. Very, very new, relatively speaking. And I am on the Preservation Committee, and I just rolled off the HHS Committee, and I'm on the Youth Education and Libraries Committee now.
Thank you, and
Thank
thank you
you.
for your issue
Thank
and your question
Thank you.
or comment. Hello?
Hi, John Shockett. I joined the board in May. I'm co-chair of the Housing and Land Use, and I also serve on Parks. So I think people have raised very good issues, but I'm actually gonna pick up off of this one. We're a fairly safe neighborhood in a fairly safe big city as things go. Statistically, that's true. So I am, well, we need to stay that way. I think that, the biggest thing that concerns me is the kind of confluence of, mental health issues that go untreated, and street homelessness and, drug addiction. I think that those things often go together. Just some background, I lived in Seattle for 15 years. I worked for the city of Seattle for 12 years on a lot of public safety issues. These things have historically been a bigger issue on the West Coast where you have better weather and you do not have a right to shelter law, and there's a lot less money going, and there was some Ninth Circuit case law for a long time that made it very difficult to clean up encampments. Remains a controversial issue there. New York, in my view, has done much better on these issues, in part because we have right to shelter and more money is spent, but I remain worried that things can get worse here. And I think it's important that we not let that happen. Being mindful of the fact that throwing people in jail is not the solution to any of this. But street homelessness, especially when it's coupled with mental illness that goes untreated, isn't good for anyone. It's not good for people experiencing it. It's not good for other people who live in the neighborhood. And I think it's very important to find a humane, proportionate, and appropriate way to get a handle on it and keep it from becoming a problem. I also agree with the e-bikes issue, although that might be a big enough thing to be separate. I'm just gonna note, this isn't my big issue, but I want to flag it as something that we should be mindful of. I am security coordinator for my synagogue on 93rd Street, and we have a lot of Jewish institutions here who spend a lot of money and put a lot of effort into security. There are a lot of people working on that. I don't know that the community board needs to deeply focus on that because that is a covered issue, but it is something that if we're going to be working on public safety, we should be aware that that's an important issue for a lot of people and institutions in this district.
Thank you, John.
My name is Ethel Scheffer. I've been on the board a long time and have been chair of, at most of the crucial times that, in this community. When I came on the board, I was active in the community, and immediately the chair then said, okay, you're going to be chair of the Uniform Services Committee, which you're going to start at that time. And I found that, what? Remarkable. What do you mean? Of course, as it turned out, when I was teaching, it turned out that there were many soldiers and others who came, and Brooklyn College, where I was teaching, managed to get money for police officers to get college degrees, and for those soldiers, most of whom were not white and came from other places, and for them to also get degrees. And so before I turned around, I became the chair of that, and I learned a great deal because I went around with the police, and I also learned a great deal from the veterans coming back and taught about over time. It meant a great deal to me, and I learned more about this. In the last years, I have thought, when this was talked about, that of the many concerns, and I am very concerned about homeless on the street, what it's been like, even when it's good, it's not good. And I've also gone around with the homeless that way, so I appreciate what you said. But I found myself, when I thought about this, I came to Jay's point, what he was saying. I realized that in the last months and years of me being on the board, just the last, I am struck by my own vulnerability as a pedestrian about the e-bikes. And I'm old, you know, but I am a walker still. I've had, the operations, but I'm still good and I don't have a cane and I like the walking. And so for me, tops is approaching a crosswalk, going into the park, Central Park, and being frightened and with justification, not just being the old lady, but I'm right that these crazy bicyclists don't stop for any rule or law. They started originally when I was walking to go shopping on my block and I'm on the sidewalk. That was my first thing. When a bicyclist is on the sidewalk and I then yell, hey, get the hell off the sidewalk. Whereupon this guy cursed the hell out of me to such an extent that I was ready for violence.
What did you curse back?
Yeah, well, we won't discuss that.
So Ethel, your issue is not just e-bikes, your issue is, rules of the road for two-wheel vehicles, and I guess for all.
Yes, and also, if I may say, I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong, they're not licensed in any way.
Correct.
They're not regulated in any way, and they are extremely dangerous on almost every thoroughfare that we have in this neighborhood. And the big thing is that there is not enforcement of that, and that I feel should make us be encouraged that whatever we decide in this group, if maybe we have 2 or 3 concerns, such as the homelessness and all, that we do this one, because this one can be subject to change, discipline, and making it safer in a clear period of time. And many of our organizations, police, others, have to join in, and we should do that. And I bet we could do a hell of a lot in 6 months to begin with.
Thank you very much, Ethel. Polly.
Okay, my name is Polly Spain, and I've served in many roles here on Community Board 7. I've served as vice chair twice, second vice chair and first vice chair. I've served as co-chair of the Housing Committee before it was formed now to Housing and Land Use. I've served as co-chair on the YEL committee, and also I've served on the Parks and Environment Committee. And I've also served as the co-chair of the Public Safety Committee, okay? And so I'm just not gonna go over what everyone else has said, but my number one concern is e-bikes, because that was the main concern when we served and we had our committee. So I want to see that issue addressed, okay? Because that's very important. I'm not gonna reiterate what Jay and, others have said. But I think that's the number one concern regarding public safety. My number 2 issue also, again, is the homelessness, that's very important as well, because I do feel that impacts everyone, with the panhandling, the loitering, et cetera, okay? And my 3rd issue for me is I think we need to improve street lighting, better street lighting, because I think that would help. And I think that's something that we can do, between now and 6 months. So I like to see us as a task force focus on issues that we can have some kind of results and some solutions, because we're always talking, we're kind of all aware of the issues that, are of concern to everyone, but I would like for our task force to really start coming up with solutions, like, holding the companies, accountable. I feel that are hiring these independent contractors, the deliveristas, et cetera, because I was walking down the street now and I'm thinking, okay, they have bikes, we have Google, which tracks, right? Why can't we force the companies? Because I know that, if you get Uber, they can kind of track and map where the cab is at. Why can't we do that with the bikes? Take their phone, because they have a phone anyway, or put some kind of tracking device so that the companies can kind of track where these people are, so that this way, if they're not obeying the rules, we can, pull up the footage or the data, et cetera, because there has to be some way where the companies have accountability. Because I'm about solutions. I don't like to just meet and talk about the same thing over and over again. I'm hoping that we brainstorm and use the tools and resources that we have available to make a difference. Because as Jay said, we're talking about this for 4 years now, and
Right.
the other issue too with, loitering, vagrancy with the kids. These are old issues, to be honest with you. And I think that we really need to, roll up our sleeves and come up with some ideas.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Yeah.
Issue,
Well.
solution,
No, no,
Yeah.
no, just information.
please.
Just when we get to it, the dates, the two resolutions were, again, September 2021.
Yes,
And December 2021.
Yes.
And the resolutions also included having the delivery companies who contract them bear the financial burden
Yeah.
of registration
Mhm.
and insurance, so it doesn't hit these guys who are hustling to make a living, and also call for enhanced enforcement of the traffic rules for e-bikes, which, by the way, are all statutorily, they're already subject to all of the vehicle and traffic. So
Okay,
It's a matter of-
let's keep going around, then
Yeah.
we'll take our deep
Thank
dive.
you.
Right.
Yes. Go right ahead, please. And don't forget also, like everyone, tell us your
Committees.
name, rank,
Your
Name, yeah.
Name, rank, and serial
serial
number.
number.
Let's see, private person got no. My name is Patrick Licky. I am the public member on the Housing and Land Use Committee. I have been there for a lot less time than most of you, it sounds like. But it's been a good time. I'm on Housing and Land Use because I also agree homelessness is a problem. We gotta do something about that, and that starts with housing and land use. Issues that brought me here, not to discount anybody's concerns, but I think echoing what Tabitha said, like protecting the vulnerable people in our communities, making sure, especially that we're not having a knee-jerk reaction that accidentally makes our problem worse. I know, like, we've got a big problem with people with mental illnesses on the street, but like, no one ever came out of Rikers feeling better than when they came in, you know? And with the e-bikes, NYPD started making like arrests, not just summons like they would with cars a few months ago. That gets people deported. People end up in camps because of that. So we got to be careful, considered, and I want to make sure that we're like taking a breath, looking at things as objectively as we can, and just doing it right by as many people as we can.
Can I just put it, there were not arrests
They
for
weren't.
e-bike.
So,
What happened is what Commissioner Tisch did is move the part into the court where if
The
someone.
class.
Right,
They changed the
Class
class to
change.
summons.
right, but so it
okay.
was for non-appearance or violating. There could be a.
It went from a
warrant.
civil to a criminal.
Right, but it wasn't an arrest made on the spot unless there was a warrant for someone who was pulled over on an e-bike. But if the whole point was because people were getting summonses and never appearing. So Commissioner Tisch, now it was backfired. It was very poorly perceived and rolled out. But it wasn't.
And it's not very active currently.
No, it is not. But
Because of
it
the
was very
blowback.
scary, particularly with ICE and situations.
Yes,
So I totally.
just using it as an
Yeah,
example.
yeah.
It doesn't.
Yeah,
And to
totally
be
get
That
it.
clear,
specific item.
It's a genuinely tricky issue because, you know, the reason that the traffic tickets have teeth is because they're attached to the driver's license.
Right.
If you have an unlicensed bicyclist, there's not a civil thing to attach them to, and it is genuinely a tricky legal problem to solve.
True.
So, but
So let's not forget our good friend Dan Gerstein, who is joining us on Zoom. Dan, I'm happy you were able to find us. I'm glad you received the link and we're
Thank you.
delighted you're here. I also see, is that you? Are you Ilan or no? Ilan
Someone's raising their hand.
separate, but I can't find them on the Zoom. So why don't you go ahead, Dan, and I'll go around to our Zoom. We're sharing our issue. I don't know if you were with us when I asked each person to
Yeah,
say
yeah,
who
sure.
in our community board, what committee you serve on, and then please share your top of mind issue if you would.
Sure. Dan Gerstein, like John, I was appointed in May and started in June. I am on Yale and BCI. And I welcome the chance to be part of this effort. I would say, like several other members, my top concern is the issue of homeless and mentally ill and how that's affecting quality of life. I won't belabor the point. I will talk about it more a little bit in a political lens. I'm very concerned that we're going to move from paralysis and avoidance of the issue to an administration that's going to make things worse for ideological reasons. And I think our role as advocates for our community is going to be more necessary than ever in making, the voices of our constituents heard.
Thank you, Dan, very much. I didn't change my seat to avoid answering my own question. I have to monitor the Zoom. So I want to thank everyone for being on this task force. It's a lot to add another responsibility to what we already do on community board, which begins as a volunteer activity, even though people in the public, if they know what we do, think somehow it's a job and we're being compensated. And we're not, it's volunteer because we love our communities. And I especially appreciate your interest in revisiting public safety again, because as we know, those especially who are on community board for quite some time or who are on the working group, there have been other, as Polly mentioned, other efforts with public safety, but I think we all agree, whatever we call it, community safety, public safety, that it's top of mind for our constituents and for our community board, and so worth taking another look at. I asked everyone to mention what is their frontline issue, because I want us to let that sit for a minute and take a turn to the structural procedural question of what we are doing here. What a task force is, several people have mentioned the 6-month timeline that we basically gave ourselves as a working group, which I think was a wise choice, so we don't lag and meet for meeting's sake and talk and get nothing done. And we do have a hand up. I'm going to recognize you in one moment. Just give me 1 second. I do want to say that I have an issue also. I don't want to duck my own question. But I guess I'm going to cheat a little bit. 2 issues. Yes, you did mention the concerns about anti-Semitism and houses of worship. So I will now say that I go to church almost every Sunday and actually sit in church worried about being shot.
Yes, wow.
That's deep. And I also spent my morning this morning over on the east side, speaking with a number of Jewish New Yorkers about their fears, not specific to their houses of worship, though that came up, but their fears about anti-Semitism in New York City. So I do think this is a very real concern. I see it as a larger cultural conversation, although obviously there's a very big public safety component there. It may be much too big for this committee, but I'm glad you brought it up. My reason for wanting to be here with all of you is that I think there's a big disconnect between the data. All our public officials say crime is down. The city's safer than ever. And I grew up in the 70s, so I know they're right. But people don't feel safer. And what I want to understand is why there's this big disconnect between the way people feel on the subway, on the street, even in their homes or their houses of worship, and what is really happening. And how do we get people to a place of feeling safer in what I think is the greatest city in the world? And so that's kind of our job, at least in our little neck of the woods, CB7. And so mine is more of a philosophical or, I guess, cultural question of public safety. And I guess public safety, in part, Doug and I have talked about this before, perception can become reality when you're talking about public safety. The last thing I want to say about this group assembled, I'm really delighted to have all of you, because hearing you speak, I can tell we're coming at it from lots of different points of view. And I think that's fantastic, because that's what we need in this country, dialogue across disagreement and difference. And we don't have enough of that. I think at community board, we do pretty well with it. But I think in this room, we're going to do a very good job of having some tough conversations around some of these issues, even where we disagree, and maybe coming together to do some good as a maybe standing committee, maybe something else, but making some recommendations to the full board. So that's my goal. Steve, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to say, I've been an advocate or an agitator for this to happen for about 18 months. I've spoken to a few of you. I've spoken to the former chair, current chair, several other members. And the reason I've been advocating for this is because I've talked to dozens and dozens of people. And what do they say? You talk about the community board, Steve. What about the fact that we lost all those cops? What about the e-bikes? What about the people who need care on the street who obviously, and what are you doing? And I always extol the virtues of getting engaged with your community and using the community board. And then when we lost all those cops, I realized there's no committee. There's no advocacy group. There's no venue for a citizen to say, my personal safety. I'm like Ethel, I'm getting older. I'm walking a little slower, okay? And it's not only scary on the streets, it's getting scary on the sidewalk. Okay,
Right.
so it's getting scary all over. And many people have said to me, do you think we're slipping back to the seventies?
Mhm.
That's about perception,
Right.
okay, that Jamie's talking. But I too, I think it's important. And forget about what happened before and why, what didn't work. That was then and this is now.
That's right.
And there's an opportunity, I think, an important opportunity. And it's one of the few ideas that everyone I've talked to, every citizen I've talked to, and I've talked to probably about 3 dozen, because I jot down all these things. They're all in favor, of course. Of course, what we do with it is a separate dialogue issue to figure out, but I appreciate it too. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who the last 18 months believed this, but I bugged Doug many times in Beverly and, Max and all that. And I think it's important, but I will tell you, what are the issues? You don't need a study. You know the issues.
Mhm.
Those are the issues.
Yeah.
You just told everyone, that's the issue.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not requiring any deep dive, okay? So, and someone said to me, Steve, you're not gonna write a resolution, are you? I said, no, we're not gonna solve the
Definitely
crime.
not.
We're not gonna solve the crime
resolution-
problem by writing a resolution. I'm
That's
with you.
So-
And we're not gonna tell the NYPD how to police. That's probably not gonna work too
Yes, well,
well
we're gonna do
either.
something else.
But we're
with
gonna,
that.
we're gonna advocate.
So the next thing we're going to do is talk about our goals. And again, I have my eye on the clock. I promised all of you. We're gonna talk about our goals for a task force, which is different from our working group, which we had, and our committee, which we may or may not move toward. Very specifically, what are our goals? I asked everybody to talk about their issues, so that could percolate until our next meeting, right? So we're not gonna take a deep dive into any one of those issues tonight. I do have a hand raised. The rules for task forces are different. But we have members of the public here and I want to recognize them. So here we go. Let's see if I can make this work. Alex Bell leaves and I get nervous, but he was on. Okay, are you there? Do we have our member of the public? Hello? I don't know if there's really a member of the public there. It says
It was
we had
Yvonne.
6, we had 6 participants.
Yeah.
Oh, dropped off.
There we go.
Oh, use control to dismiss.
Raise hand.
Or it doesn't say how to.
Oh, wait.
Alex
let's-
has raised
let's-
his hand.
Let's
Are you
move
there?
forward.
Hmm,
Do you need to promote him to
wait, let me
Either
try.
promote or at least allow them to speak.
Oh, my God,
both.
what is going on?
Let's move forward on what we're talking about because.
Well, I want to be
Do you see
respectful.
them?
I-
Do you see them on the
Oh,
screen?
wait.
I don't see him on the screen. I saw him here.
So see if the person's still there, they can put their question in the Q and A.
Oh, yes, right there.
Do you
Okay,
see
so
him?
there's 5 people. All right.
Okay, he's rejoining. There we go. Okay.
Hooray.
There you go.
Hey,
I know you.
Hey Doug, and I have been putting my questions in the Q and A. I think they're
Forgive
probably
us,
off
we
screen for
have-
you all. No worries.
forgive us, we have a new-
I realize
a new
tech is.
fantastic-
I
Yeah,
realize
go ahead.
tech's fine. Thanks for having me. I was trying to figure out how to attend in person, but I couldn't figure out from the calendar where the actual location was, so I joined by Zoom.
For future reference,
Yeah.
it's this day every month in the same office where all the other meetings happen, the
Okay.
community. Yeah, so
Sure.
join.
Sometimes they move around, but thank you very much. I will try to be at the next one in person. So my name is Elon. I'm a resident on the Upper West Side here. Been here for about a decade, so not as long as some of you, but more than others. The most important, the thing that bothers me almost every day is sort of vandalism and vagrancy on my block. I get probably about once a week, twice a week, different people show up at my doorstep, literally dump my trash on the curb or on my doorstep, and then take the trash bags. They need the trash liners for taking, I don't know, for their groceries or whatever it is they need them for. and then I get stuck with the DSNY fines. And I realize that doesn't seem like a public safety issue, but it is, it is, it's vandalism. And to your question about stats and stuff, try reporting anything that isn't like a murder or mugging or an assault to the police. If I call them up, most things I've called up our precinct about, they've said, that's not a crime we're going to take a police report on. We just like, it's not a thing we care about. It's not a thing we're going to enforce. We don't have time for this. Like, let us know when you're getting let us know when there's life, when there's, blood or guts involved, and we'll get involved with that. I also wanted to, you said one issue, so that's my issue, but I do want to second Doug's comments on shoplifting. Probably about once a week, I'm either witnessing a shoplifting incident or in some cases interrupting and stopping one. And that's here on the Upper West Side, supposedly the safest neighborhood, one of the safest neighborhoods in New York, but you try to go to the Duane Reade on 79th Street and talk to their staff, they know who's going to shoplift them. They walk in every day at 10 a.m. and they walk out with 100 rolls of toilet paper or whatever it might be. They know them by sight, they know them by name, they can't do anything about it. So I'll leave it at.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us and for sharing your concerns. And we appreciate that. And we welcome you to come in person or on Zoom, whichever is easier for you.
Appreciate it.
And we
Thank you.
appreciate your engaging with this committee. Or, I'm sorry, task force. All right, so let's talk now about our structure, and given our structure as a task force, what our goals are, where we think we're going. We gave ourselves, as a working group, we chose a 6-month time frame. We had a lot of talk about that. Half the people in this room were on that working group. And we had our reasons for the 6 months, and basically that was to put our feet to the fire and make it happen, make something happen, a recommendation to the full board that we have a standing committee, or maybe it's a recommendation on 3 issues of concern that have been identified by this task force, and then maybe we disband. Do folks have thoughts? I'm actually going to take a chance on a freewheeling conversation. Oh my, no, not totally freewheeling. Please raise your hand and be recognized by the chair. Tabitha, please.
So I have one thought, kind of a general thought, is for all these issues, for many, if not most of these issues, given the new administration, the new city council, there are going to be bills that are coming, that are being discussed. Some are left over in the last session,
Right.
will have to be re-aged.
Right.
Some are new things that people have talked about that they're going to do. So one task, I think, is to go through all those, and it's an ongoing process. But, someone could say, there's a bill on e-bikes, for example. It's going to be, it's gonna be argued on, January 30th. Here are the issues. That can inform what we do here. We can decide to opine on that or not opine on it, but I think it will inform whatever we try to do around, say, e-bikes, just to take an example of an issue, right? So that's just one thing that we can do as part of our process. I'm just suggesting it.
So track the new administration's
Yeah,
actions around broadly defined issues
Yeah.
of public safety.
yeah, exactly. I guess same thing at the state level, federal level.
I was gonna ask about state
Yeah.
level.
Doug?
Are you still? Yeah, I'm done.
So I agree with what Tabitha just said. One of the comments I was gonna make is that there's multiple parts to, let's say, enforcement, right? There's the legislative part, which you just covered. There's obviously the enforcement, and there's the judicial. And at one point, and maybe Jay remembers, we had, I believe, a legislative task force on that we met
Well,
once or twice.
It actually, when I ran my losing campaign for board chair, one of the things that I had suggested was legislative task force for exactly the kind of thing that you're talking about.
That's a great idea.
It's not easy.
Right.
I
Well,
mean, tracking bills and, there are mechanical ways to do it, but it requires this very specific effort to track. I mean, the legislature, which I worked in Albany for 16 years, introduces literally thousands of bills every year. They enact hundreds. So there are services, But it requires basically a constant effort because legislation is constantly being introduced.
Was it, so just, I wanted to finish my point about that is that, first of all, as a community board, as a whole, we are often very interested in whatever we're tracking legislation, even if it goes to federal level, but obviously we're most interested in city council and state. So all different committees within their purview should be concerned about pending legislation related to their committees, and also perhaps advocating for some new legislation, being in touch with our elected officials who are the proponents of those bills, which we may choose to support or not. So I just, in my experience in this role, I've noticed that there are lots of challenges, obviously, and a lot of it's very political. We talked about e-bikes and enforcing the third-party delivery companies. And boy, oh boy, do they have lobbyists, and boy, oh boy, do they have money. Uber Eats is Uber worldwide. And boy, do they whisper in people's ears in Albany, in the city council. And so I mean, I'm hopeful, and I think we should absolutely do all this noble work and everything. It's complicated. But we should be very mindful of those processes, the
And we
legislative, the enforcement, and the
Can we
prosecution.
take the 6 months?
Wait, Ethel, hold,
I'm
people,
sorry.
we've got hands. Doug, I missed the very tail end of what you
No,
said.
I'm just saying, it's
6
the
months.
legislative, the enforcement, and the prosecution, so there are many laws on the books currently that are not necessarily being enforced for concerns we already have.
Hmm.
It is not legal for a bike to be on the sidewalk. It is
Correct.
not legal for a bike to go through a red light. It is not legal to
Right.
not yield to a pedestrian. When those are they enforced or not? So in some cases, we don't have to create any new bills or just to advocate for the enforcement of. In the case of retail theft, which is something that I'm very interested in, there are things that DA Bragg has been enforcing now with trespass affidavits. Some of the retail stores have been utilizing it. I just had an experience 2 days ago at the CVS on 86 in Amsterdam. And I'm happy to say that because of my advocacy, not mine, but DA Bragg and the NYPD, they are now using trespass notices.
Yeah, they are.
And they are now having some success. It's just a little tool in the toolbox. It's not an end all be all, but there are many individuals who were chronic recidivist thieves, I have to say, in the CVS that have been trespassed, and they
Right.
are now not coming into the store
So-
anymore because they know they could be charged with a felony arrest.
Your point being, I hear you saying that we have some tools in the toolbox that sometimes are not being
Yeah.
used. And perhaps we can put an eye on those as well as tracking, what Peta is saying, tracking what's coming down the pike.
Yeah.
And
Jenna-
proposing new.
And proposing,
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I think
Jennifer-
you made a good point. Sorry.
no, go, if you're following
Yeah,
up,
I'm following.
and then Jennifer has her hand,
Yeah.
then John, then Jay, then F.
Yeah, you made a good point about enforcement. Yeah, so laws are on the books, but a big thing is, okay, what are the actual cops in our precincts? What are they actually enforcing on a day-to-day basis? What are they investigating? What are they spending money and time on?
Right.
And then like, how do we affect that without, as you say, telling cops how to do their job, right? How can we be part of that or that conversation of, can you enforce law X, Y, or Z?
Engagement, how do we engage
Yeah, how do we
respectfully?
engage?
Right,
Prioritization
right.
of it, because there's a
Exactly.
limited amount of resources.
Yep.
And what's most important, yeah.
Jennifer?
To piggyback on that, I think current condition is exactly a great place to start, because I think with particularly homeless outreach, we happily call the outreach coordinator at Goddard or the executive director, and we could happily sit down and you'll know because of your work, and I will know because of my work in some ways. We'll ask the question, say, okay, this is what the contracts say. And they're available, like, we know what the outreach contract says, we know what the thresholds are, and they will say something to the effect of, yes, and this is the reality of the enforcement, and this is the reality of this. But I think a great place to start, to your point, is the current condition. What is there, exactly what you're saying. I appreciate there's a bunch of very wordy legislative pieces that may or may not mean anything, but there are particular rules that apply. So for example, this trespassing notice, is that something that, you could write 3 sentences, we could write 3 sentences about understand it and say, this is how 3 stores are using it in our
Mhm.
area successfully. And that could be then rolled out to different, and you'll say, well, this place has chosen not to use it because of this, there's
Yeah.
different, but I think the homeless outreach in particular, I know maybe I could have a meeting, we could understand. I have two friends I can also call and say, okay, this is what the contract really says for the homeless outreach for the city. But yet, we still have many people living on the street, which is different than it was post or pre-pandemic, frankly. And when, you know, two administrations ago, it's different. And why, how has it changed?
Mhm.
Why has it changed? And you can no longer pick up the phone and call to have someone, you know, to have street outreach happen. We also should know that the subway outreach, because I'm concerned now about my kids riding the subway now, because I think the perception versus the reality is different. I used to not be concerned that someone was going to just get stabbed on the subway and be pushed. And now we have access to so much information. It's unclear whether that was really happening 10 years ago or if it wasn't. And I had the same concern that you
Right,
have, but I
right.
also know like take a risk, you know, because I can't put my kid on the subway right now because I cannot really risk that person is well enough.
Right,
And it used to be that you could call and that person would be asked to go into a shelter, and now you don't have to, I think. And so I want to unpack it, but I think we could come back with like, this is the current condition.
Mm.
And this for which is, and then it may change with the new administration and what that could look like. But I think the current condition is a nice place to start for all of these three major buckets that we've identified
Mhm.
as priorities.
Mhm. Yes, thank you,
Yeah.
thank you. John,
Okay, so just some structural thoughts, dovetailing on what we just talked about. It's not only, in some areas, there actually is a legal deficiency. I think that how we manage involuntary mental health treatment as an alternative to jail is one of those areas where the laws just aren't sufficient. But right, e-bakes, we're not talking about anything except possibly licensing. Everything's already illegal. It's just a matter of enforcement. What I will say from my years of in Seattle city government is these things are subject to so much bureaucratic finger pointing. The prosecutors will say, well, we can't do anything because the police aren't even bringing us any cases. And the police will say, well, we're not bringing cases because the prosecutors won't do anything with that. Then you get situations where no one gets arrested for trespass or for shoplifting because it's a misdemeanor. But then suddenly they get hit with a felony because you do the workaround with the trespass system, which works, but then that itself can be perceived as disproportionate and can draw all sorts of other issues into this. So, no answers. It's just that these things are complicated and a lot of different people have a lot of different interests, and you talk to different people, you get different answers, and the truth can be somewhere in between. I also just, the point about how we're statistically a safe neighborhood, but that's not people's perception. Seattle Police Chief from about 15 years ago, once put it as, there are two separate problems: crime and the perception of crime. And they're two different things, right? You can constat your way to saying
That's
that
right.
crime is low. The stats are only as good as the data collection, but if you're collecting data, which for at least serious violent crime is usually pretty accurate, it is what it is. But people's perception is an independent problem, and the fact that people perceive more crime than the stats show doesn't negate the stats.
The definitions have
Yeah,
changed over time.
right.
Yeah.
but the
it's still
stats
a
don't
problem.
negate the way people feel.
Yeah, exactly, but it's still a problem in and of itself, and I think that you just need to acknowledge that they're different things.
Right.
And they both matter, and you need to address them both, but not conflate them, because they're really different things.
That's right.
One is perception and one is stats. And the last structural point I want to make in terms of how we approach all these things is I think it's important to be concrete about what the problem is. Like with e-bikes. The problem is not e-bikes. E-bikes are great. E-bikes aren't going to go anywhere. They're useful for getting around. They're useful for food delivery. I think they can be a wonderful tool for the city. The problem is that they don't follow the laws they're supposed to follow. E-bikes are going to continue to exist. They need to be subject to and expected to follow the same sets of laws that cars follow, maybe modified for the fact that they're bikes. So, I don't want to have this be an anti-e-bike thing. It should be a pro setting norms and enforcing those and having e-bikes work in a way that
Pro
doesn't
public
jeopardize other
safety.
people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm. Pro safety.
My next,
Jay, you are next. Thank you,
because I
John.
have to go. If I don't get home in about 10 minutes, my wife will be a self-imposed widow.
That sounds like a public safety issue, or private
Public
safety
safety,
issue.
That's my
Personal
immediate-
safety.
Domestic
Yeah.
violence
my
is yet
immediate
another
safety.
issue.
That will mess up.
First of all,
corrections.
with respect to John, there aren't existing statutes, very important statutes with regard to enforcement. You're absolutely, laws are on the books. But, and many people confuse licensing and registration. I didn't propose like specific licenses to operate an e-bike, but registration is not on. And because it's not on the books, anything that happens with an e-bike where they just take off, don't identify themselves, there's no method like there is with every other single kind of vehicle to identify.
Yeah, I
So-
agree.
So
That's a
I'm
procedural
talking
problem. Yeah.
about registration.
Mhm.
The next thing is insurance. They are not, every other vehicle in the state of New York is required to have what the law defines as financial responsibility. In most cases, almost all cases, it's insurance, but big corporations can provide other means of financial security. So those things are very important, both for identification and for recourse when e-bikes are involved in something where someone's injured. Right now, people have no means of identifying who's been involved and have no recourse, monetary recourse if they're injured. So those two things which are not on the books are essential. And just as an aside, because of the situation with the delivery community, it's also in New York, any owner of a vehicle is vicariously liable for the actions of anyone using that vehicle with permission. That's not the case now with the owners of the e-bikes. By either the delivery service, not an issue because they don't own them. But Lyft, which is the parent company of e-bike,
City bike.
owns
City bike.
City bike.
Yeah.
City Bike, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. City Bike, they can well afford to provide the insurance or financial responsibility for the people that lease. If you lease a car, the rental company is responsible. You lease a bike, City Bike, they're not. So there are very specific statutory things that we should advocate for and that should be done. And with that, I hope I'm off to a forgiving life.
Thank you, Jay. There will be notes. There will be notes you can consult about the rest of the meeting.
Would a law
Ethel-
that made Lyft legally liable for cars that are, so for bikes that they lease out, would that be a state law? A change or a city law?
It could be either, actually. State law, it's just a matter of taking the existing statutes,
Yeah,
which cover all other vehicles,
yeah.
and adding e-bikes, which are already defined in the vehicle and traffic law. So it's a very simple legislative process to it.
But there is.
All right,
there is a bill.
gentlemen,
There have
Gentlemen.
been bills.
gentlemen,
Siegel, right?
gentlemen,
Yeah.
Hoyleman Siegel, my good friend, we'll talk about him later because Jay will be murdered and that would be a problem. And the point of this is not to dive into any one
Right.
issue. Right now, what we're trying to do is talk about the forward movement of our task force. And I appreciate what everyone said thus far. I'm taking very careful notes. The next person, and we have quite a few, and I promise I'd get you all out of here by 8. The next person on the list, I see you, is Ethel.
Thank you. all.
Thank you, Jay.
I
We'll see you next.
apologize for
No,
having
no,
to
never
run.
apologize. We were happy to have you for the time we
Some of
had
you I'll
you.
see in my third committee meeting tomorrow night.
Yes. Ethel.
I will be as quick as I can be.
And remember, we're talking now about the scope of the task force, the
Correct, I got
structure
it.
of the task force and the goals being the
Okay.
primary focus.
I now am taking off from several different points and I'm gonna try to put them together. so that we accomplish something in a 6-month period. And I'm using that 6 months. And I will also include in that, 3 different concerns. They may not be the best of all, but during that 6-month period, with maybe division of assignments, we proceed with 3 different major concerns, e.g. on, let's say, the question of bikes, enforcement, and related matters. Put that together, and that is, we do the best we can do of what our concerns are, what we have investigated, and what we would like to propose for 2 months. The second one, I'm not sure about this, but whether we deal with or focus on that there is considerable stealing or bad form or concerns in our major stores and places where we buy things, and that it's more chaotic and dangerous, and we have to focus on that in my second what we do of the two months.
Mhm.
And the third one, of course, is major, and that is our concerns and how they have been dealt with increasingly in a different way, and that is the question of the people on the streets who appear to be in danger, in trouble, and are mentally and so on, and take the examples of what isn't happening. And often, I think it's true in this neighborhood, the concern is often at certain locations. The difficulties of people who are in trouble, but they focus and come together at 3 different locations. So what I'm saying is, in the 6 months, we choose these, I gave you the 3,
Mhm.
with the purpose being that at the end of the 6 months, we've gotten information, we've gotten advocacy, we got a report, and then we say, now, folks, these are the 3 things that we can concentrate on, and we even try to say, here's what we have to begin to do.
Thank
on
you.
these 3.
So I hear you suggesting that we pick our top 3 as
Yeah,
discussed
I
here
use
tonight.
that, the top
Yep.
3, because I heard it
Uh-huh.
in part, and
Mhm.
I think I want to get data
Yep,
and that goes with concerns.
Yep.
And that goes with what we see and can research
yes,
and make the points.
got it. So
Just
Eth-
one other quick thing, when somebody said, I'm sorry, you
Steve.
said that we have been losing police.
yes,
That's something I used to know a lot about, and I'd still like to know. That may be part of a lot of the 3 things that I've just announced, that may be some system thing or political thing, or I don't know, but when you said that, I kept thinking, wait a minute, we now are having a new police commissioner. She's evidently very good. We should be able to get to her on some of the
Gail
questions.
is trying.
all
I
right,
wouldn't trust that. May
All
I
right.
say, no, I wouldn't trust that.
all right, let's, maybe that would
But
be
you
our
get
4th
the-
issue that
You
we
get the 3 things.
I do.
said.
What I hear you saying is we would tackle specific issues over the course of
Right.
the 3 months and launch those issues,
Right,
at least with data and research.
right, and we
for
can
the
divide up
community
with
board or
our
maybe committee.
abilities and
Got
do
it.
it and know we got
Gotcha,
something.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I was
Okay.
germinating that myself. Patrick.
I actually think that's a great idea. Generally speaking, I think we're gonna do our best work if we're more focused on like a smaller set
Yeah.
of issues. I think if we like really dig in, get down to as detailed knowledge as we can on the issue, that would be great. Like, for instance, what Polly brought up with lighting.
Yeah.
Oh, I
We could
love
take,
that.
take an inventory of the neighborhood. Like, I agree, it's all
Mhm.
really dark in some places on
Mhm.
Broadway for no particular reason. We go like, which places have no lighting, which places not enough, which places have the wrong kind? Is there a scaffolding that maybe needs to get lit up better? Getting really and like, what barriers are there to actually making that happen? Who would we need to talk to do
Mhm.
that?
Yep.
Like getting power hookups from DOT or something. Getting really into it like that, and then either referring, or maybe both referring to relevant committees like transport, housing.
Environment, parks and environment.
Yeah, all of the various committees, bring and have them look at it. I know, for instance, transport, got referred, by a constituent, like, a constituent felt that there was a dangerously structured intersection at 86th Street.
Mhm, mhm.
I don't know if that's been changed at all, but it was a very concrete, actionable thing, and I think that is the kind of thing we should be focusing on most, is generating those.
Three areas, focus.
Thank
and
you.
Recommendations.
Steve, you had your hand up. Do you remember?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
have
Yeah.
not forgotten Isaac, my friend. He's next. Steve, go right ahead.
So, the idea of trying to do something big and have great achievements after 6 months,
Yeah.
I'm all for big achievements. Believe me, no one wants to dream small, okay? But I think the biggest issue is that the community board is talking about public safety issues and is an advocate for those who are scared in our community. Whether they are people who are getting scammed, mostly seniors, every month there's a report, dozens of people being scammed, okay? Whether it's crossing the street, okay, or on the sidewalk, or of course, I mean, I'm on the community advisory board for the 83rd Street Safe Haven. It's a
Mhm.
fantastic success. All the worries expressed are never materialized. Yeah, it's garbage. That's not a worry about, there's 100 and something people. Many have gone on to supportive housing. These are the toughest people to get off the street because they're persistently
Mhm.
homeless and no one is gonna convince them, none of the outreach. So this is a low barrier, okay, a tremendous success. We need to talk about things that work, okay, not just when people are upset
Yes.
about things that don't work and they don't want to have a shelter. Here, yes, it's next to a school, okay, there's been no problem with any school kids, okay? I mean, we're talking about 100 and something people. So just having, if you could talk about it,
Right.
you could deal with it. That's a Mr. Rogers.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Mr. We could, and our community board isn't talking about it
That's
in a concise way.
Right.
So the idea that this institution, this civically run institution, is talking about it and hearing from citizens and is a safe place to talk about your anxiety and your concerns,
But
that
do
opens
something.
up dialogue about what can be done. We're not gonna write a resolution that's gonna change any
Don't
of these
do
issues.
that. Let's not do
Complex
that.
problems require complex solutions, okay? Mental health issues, I mean, let's take care of mental health in 2 to 3 months,
Yeah.
okay? You
We
know,
have 6 months.
yeah, 6 months.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, I'm not saying don't shoot high,
Mhm.
but think about what can you really do in 6 months?
Mhm.
And I think you can put a much brighter light on the concerns of public
Right.
safety that our community is worried about.
Right, it's
Okay.
good. I think, I feel you're following on what I was trying to say, take three and, yeah. yeah.
Let's hear from
Go
Isaac.
ahead.
So my suggestion would be twofold. First, that we begin to
Steve.
define what public safety is and what the unique value proposition would be of a public safety committee. I think that a lot of the things we've discussed tonight, with all due respect, I think that they fall into the territory of other committees. For instance, I feel that I've not attended a transportation committee meeting, admittedly, but I
Oh,
feel.
please join us. It's always a good time.
But I would imagine that probably 80% of the time is spent talking about e-bikes.
No,
Mm.
they're talking about they hate cars. And we
20%,
gotta get rid of
20%.
cars.
20%.
Parking,
Um,
loading zones.
But it intersects, your point is well taken.
Yeah,
So,
what-
so
mhm.
let me take a step back and then,
Mhm.
and would you yield and then I'll
Sure.
pass it back? Okay. So when we had the working group,
Mhm.
there was discussion, those who were on the working group will remember that public safety actually touches every committee. And do we really have to have this committee? Because, and the whole reason this came about is 4 or 5 committees had dealt with significant public safety matters, transportation among them. And we thought, well, these were big public safety issues. Maybe we should have had a committee that dealt with those instead. Or in addition to, joint committee. So that's how we got there. So we are often dealing with not just the e-bike safety issue, but other related public safety matters on transportation and you'll see the various other committees. And so I think your point is well taken. Are we not just dealing with public safety as a community board anyway on our other committees?
Right, so I would suggest, determining that value proposition or discerning it rather. And functioning perhaps as a steering committee of sorts or an advisory committee to the others that are on the board and saying, this is what you should prioritize in the realm of public safety. I would also suggest that we explore creating a mechanism through which people can submit and feel responded to any concerns that they may have. There are numerous Facebook groups that I'm a member of where people frequently complain about particular spots, someone brandished a weapon here, someone is openly selling drugs there, the street lights are out and et cetera, et cetera. So I think, and then they'll say, we've reported this to the precinct, nothing has been done, we've called homeless outreach and people remain in place there, we've called the council member's office and the issues remain. So I think adding another layer of responsiveness, through which we could advocate to, the actual people that could enforce the laws that we may already have. Or may not.
I like that. I like that.
So I just
go
have
ahead,
a quick
Patrick.
question on that, and
Mhm.
there doesn't need to be any, I'm not gonna make any follow-up on it.
I see you, Dan.
Uh,
Go ahead, Patrick.
do you feel like NYPD's existing mechanisms for community input are deficient in that regard?
I think it probably depends on the precinct, to be honest. I mean, I think, response times are not uniform across the board. They have to triage things. And, I'm not a law enforcement official, so
They've changed commanders now
yeah.
twice
They
in
do.
short times.
I'm not gonna comment on how they
My-
should police. per
My
se,
A
but-
normal amount of time.
My experience, and Doug may have something to add to this or more to add than I have to add, but my experience is that the more places people can go, the better, because some people might prefer to come to us, some people might prefer to go to them, some people might like both options. I mean, I've gone to some of the precinct meetings and said to people there, well, why don't you come to our community board meetings? And they'll say right to my face, I just like coming here better.
They don't
And
feel that the community board is the place.
they don't
That's
feel the
my
community.
point.
Now, we're trying to remedy
It
that.
has not
but-
been the place.
But
Right.
I think the more avenues of engagement, the better, right? I like your idea very much.
Sure.
Dan, did you want to add?
Never.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on what Isaac said. I think we should be much more proactive and aggressive in soliciting public input. When I came to the board, one of the, I'll try to be as respectful as possible, but also being blunt, is the biggest deficiency is the way we do not utilize social media to engage with the community and talk to people where they are. It's an incredibly efficient, effective tool for soliciting public input and showing that we as a board are listening, responsive, and a place that people can come to when they have concerns. And I think one of the most important things this task force can do is, since we're thinking holistically about these things, not in our committee silos, is to very purposely and strategically reach out on social media, conduct polls, like Isaac was saying, visit the Facebook groups, right, that we belong to. Say, hey, the community board is really stepping up its focus on public safety. We want to hear from people in the community about what their concerns are, what their ideas are, and what they want us to focus on. And then supplement that with, in essence, town halls or field meetings, right? Because like one of the complaints that I've seen come up is that when agencies in the city do outreach just digitally, they miss people, right? And to
Right.
me, it's not one or the other. It really needs to be both if we're going to try and fully capture public sentiment. But I do think having a strategic and aggressive effort on social media to solicit what people's concerns are, and then presenting that to the full board and the different committees will, I think, go a long way towards informing, and I agree with this sentiment, about what should the top 3 priorities be for the community board.
No, I appreciate that a lot. All right, so we have 10 minutes before 8, and I actually have to be sitting at another desk 5 minutes from here before my next meeting. Doug, I am gonna recognize you because I also wanted to ask you a question to close out the meeting. So maybe you can hold in what you're gonna say and answer the question I'm about to
Ask the
ask.
question first?
Yes, so I would like everyone to think about everything we've talked about, issues and process and this engagement, very interesting and important engagement topic that came up at the end, which is separate from process, I think. And then Doug, I thought maybe you could, many people here understand this, but I don't think it hurts to repeat. The very important distinction between task force and committee.
Oh.
And why we chose task force, we talked about this a lot too. And then what the benefit of committee would be if we chose to recommend that to the chair.
Well, okay.
We also have the option, as written in our recommendation to the chair, to ask him to extend us for another 6 months at the end of this 6-month period. He has a full year he can give us in the end. The task force can have a year of life.
Okay.
So if you could answer
Take the
that.
6 months and do the 3 things.
We
and
heard your
do
recommendation,
So
but I
what-
want Doug to just give us
so-
something to think about
Right.
in terms of the actual procedural requirements.
Okay.
And then we're gonna walk out, we're all gonna think about it. I'm gonna send around the notes. We also could watch the YouTube if you're desperate to watch it. And then we'll meet again. Go ahead, Doug.
So I want to answer your question last, but what I want to say summarily is that in the last year and a half or so, as the public safety coordinator, I've taken on a lot of all these issues. So I'll share with you and the rest of the task force a lot of things and some successes and some dead ends. Almost every topic we talked about has been covered, and I want to make sure that we don't reinvent the wheel, or I'll
Right.
tell you, hey, we tried this and this is what happened, or this is where we stalled, or this is where we failed or succeeded. So it's too detailed now. I'm chomping at the bit. I'm listening to everything. I'm like, oh, yeah, well, this is, the data issue, the statistics, calling the precinct versus calling 911 and open data and 311. It's so intricately, it's a tapestry and it's a delicate one. Just trying to think. Oh, and also something was brought up, I think it's really important, hate crimes, prevention of hate crimes, protecting our houses of worship. I do want you to know that even though I wasn't doing it very publicly, the NYPD, the state police, the FBI, the Joint Terrorism Task Force, JGTF, they are among the best in the world. And we absolutely regularly spoke to them on behalf of all houses of worship. That includes mosques and churches and synagogues, as to how they are to be protected here in this neighborhood. And we parroted back. It was a bilateral saying, here's what we're concerned about. Sometimes the precinct, the community affairs would say, please tell us, I want to know where are all the schools? They didn't know everything, not only the houses of worship, but the satellite offices. So that is very much on the top of everyone's list, but we should be very, very aware of it. Anyway, what I'll do is offline, I'll share with the chair here, just any of my notes on things that we talked about. I guess I'll leave it at that.
The difference between task.
Can you
force-
explain
yes.
elevation
So,
from
right,
task
so I
force?
think the reason we chose to do a task force is because it's much more nimble. We aren't really bound by quorum. We can be more flexible. I mean, I think it's good that we're noticing it and following Robert's rules. But we just have more flexibility. I think that's really why we did it. It's not really anything else. I think quorum was one of the main reasons.
But we do want you here, so don't think you don't
Yeah.
have to come.
Right, and so I think, you know, we were just more nimble and flexible, and as we define what we're gonna do, we'll recommend it to go back into a committee that Polly was co-chair of, or not, or continue this and
The
Is it required-
bylaws,
Is
the
it required
bylaws,
to be hybrid and with public notice?
If it's a
and with
public meeting, it is.
Participation?
correct.
yeah,
So it has
I
all of those access.
I do believe so, and whether it's required or not, I think we're gonna do it because it's the right thing to do, but I think it's also required.
And the bylaws do say that a task force only has a year,
Mhm.
That's
and then
okay
it
now.
sunsets.
That's okay,
But the
It can be
committee
reinstated.
obviously is standing, so.
Yeah.
just do
So
it.
that's where we are, and so everybody
do it.
take all of that with you and
Mhm.
think about it. And we'll come back together in a month.
Yeah.
Happy New Year. Thank you
Happy New Year.
very, very much for your participation in this effort.
Thank you.
I think we should, we can do.
So we're gonna meet
resolutions
again?
Because the.
Yes, one,
Okay.
say, it'll be the same, this, I
I'm
worked
just
with
saying- oh,
Jesse
you're
to
saying-
find the day that
Pass
all of you
resolution
were
that's the
available.
mental
And
health.
this is the only
Oh,
day,
okay.
where all of you don't have other commitments on
So
other.
So we're
days.
meeting
Like I said,
February
I propose a resolution.
Whatever
to
the
outlaw
first
crime.
Wednesday,
Okay.
first Thursday of February.
First
is.
Thursday.
What is today, Wednesday?
Today is Wednesday.
The first Wednesday of,
It'll be the
Okay,
first
so that'd be-
Wednesday of the
so that's
month.
the
So
fourth.
next month,
That's
that's
the fourth.
February 4th.
Okay, good.
Let me
All
put
right,
that
cool.
in.
that's the day after full board?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I don't know off the dome.
Yeah, well, we
Yeah.
don't know, but
If
anyway.
it's the
Yeah.
first Wednesday, it's
Yeah.
after the first
Yeah.
Tuesday.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, she
Yeah.
wants it to be
I'm now gonna be very
at the
tired.
first Wednesday
Wednesday.
after full board every
Okay,
month.
gotcha.
Because she checked everyone's schedules
Okay.
and believe me, thank you